I'm Paul Wellings. I was a music journalist with the NME in the 80s, writing about underground black music. At the same time, I was also an MC with a militant punk reggae band called the Anti-Social Workers, who worked with the Mad Professor, who's probably the leading dub producer in the UK. He worked with people like Massive Attack and Lee Scratch Perry, legends and icons like that. And also at the same time I was a pirate DJ with LWR, London-wide radio, which was the biggest pirate station at the time, alongside Kiss when they were a pirate. And on board we had DJs like Pete Tong, who's, at the time had the Cockney rhyming slang, it's all gone Pete Tong, and he's now a global dance phenomenon. And also we had Tim Westwood, who I know a lot of people mock as the son of the Bishop of Peterborough, trying to be a ghetto gangster, but he was actually really well respected by the old school hip hop heads such as the Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, all the Def Jam people. They all came to his studios to show respect to him, and he was very knowledgeable about the subject. When I look back at my music journalist days, I'm just really disappointed that some of the heroes, in the music press, the writers that I loved and admired, have changed so dramatically. One of them was Tony Parsons, who was a punk writer on the NME, mixed with the Pistols and the Clash, and he got me a job on the NME, and he was the best man at my wedding. He wrote about stuff, really important stuff like Rock Against Racism, the Anti-Nazi League. He was a really subversive writer, big pro-Labour man. And then a few years ago he joined The Sun, which is a big shock to me. And it's not a paper that I ever thought he particularly liked. And then he came out and said that he supported UKIP, and that was a massive bombshell to me. And I just thought, it's almost like a 180-degree turn that he'd taken, and just couldn't believe he'd changed that dramatically. Another hero who changed quite a bit was Gary Bushell. Like Parsons, he was a big pro-Labour man. He wrote beautifully, wittily and passionately about the mighty two-tone movement, the new ska movement, bands like The Specials, Selector, Madness, Bad Manners, The Beats. And to me that movement was more revolutionary than punk because of its unity. And as I said, he was a big pro-Labour man, wrote beautifully about that. And then he went to The Sun as well, and he crossed the picket line during the printers' strike at the time, which was a shock. And also he became a candidate, he stood as a candidate for the English Democrats Party, which is like a fringe right-wing organisation. And then he later claimed that he supported UKIP. And the other hero of mine that changed was Gary Johnson, who was an awesome anti-Tory punk poet who supported my band, the Anti-Social Workers. He loved our band. He actually called us catchier than a dose of clap at a drunken orgy, which I thought was a hilarious line. But also he wrote a feature on us, he wrote live reviews about us, he got me work as a ranting poet. But he was a big pro-Labour man as well, he supported Derek Hatton and Militant and all of that stuff. He followed his best mate Gary Bushell to The Sun as well, and then in 2002 he stood as a Conservative councillor at the election in Vange in Essex, because he was an Essex boy. He lived about 40 miles outside of London. He was a little bit cut off from the London scene and the London slang, but he was a very funny guy. And and what was so ironic about that is, when he was a punk poet, he wrote an awesome poem called The Young Conservatives, where he talked about how much he hated the Conservative Party. And there he was, actually standing as a councillor for the Conservatives. So I just couldn't get my nut around that at all. And but life's too short to hold grudges, and I don't bear any grudge or malice towards those people, because they were a massive help in my career, and a massive help in terms of getting me work on the Mirror, the Standard, the NME, supporting my band. So big thanks to them for that. I'm just disappointed that they changed so dramatically, and they're not the people they were in the 80s. You know, which you know, it's, again, you know, just very, very disappointing. You know, they moved in a different direction to me. Talking of UKIP, which I was when I was mentioning some of the music journalists that are supporting UKIP now, I always remember that great Russell Brand quote when during Question Time, that's the BBC programme, when he said that he talked about Nigel Farage, and he said Farage he ain't no Del Boy, he ain't no Arthur Daly, he's a pound shop Enoch Powell, and we should worry about him. And that was a brilliant quote, I thought, which summed it up. I mean, I love Russell Brand anyway, not just because he's a West Ham supporter and he dated Kate Moss, which are obviously fine qualities, but for people from a certain background, you know, he tells the truth, and he's a great male role model, even though papers like The Sun and the Mail mock him. You know, I just love the man. Going back to the Anti-Social Workers, you know, the band I was an MC with that band. We were just three punks from the London overspill who spat bars over sort of very heavy dub rhythms by the Mad Professor, who, as I said, was a leading dub producer. He got us gigs with Eka Mouse, he was a reggae legend, and also Pete Tosh, Bob Marley's partner. But the weird thing was, we had that punk ethos, that DIY ethos of do it yourself, and we used to literally turn up for gigs and just hand a cassette of these dub rhythms to the mixing desk, and then we just get up on stage and just rant over the top of it. So that was what you call travelling light. But one gig I always remember that we did was at the Bletchley Compass Club just outside London. That was reviewed by the NME, by Exmoor from the NME, who gave us a rave review, and he was in that awesome punk soul band, the Redskins. But that gig, I'll always remember, we just finished our set and suddenly all these Nazi skinheads stormed the stage, and our attitude with the Anti-Social Workers was that self-defence is no offence, and we did everything we could to protect our people. But it was the most violent gig I've ever been to. It was a massive, massive tear-up. And sadly, I was right in the middle of it all. When I've still got a scar on my lip to this day, which is a constant reminder of that night. But for anyone who glorifies violence, they should have been there that night, because I thought someone was going to die. There were people getting bottled in the neck, in the face. It was horrific, really brutal, savage night. And the headliners, the Newtown Neurotics, who were this phenomenal punk band, when all this riot was kicking off, they actually came on stage and sang their anthem, Mindless Violence, which is so ironic when all the mindless violence was going on all around us. And luckily, the police and security arrived and dispersed all of the Nazi skinheads. But, you know, that was, you know, a night I think a lot of us could have done without, to be honest. Looking back to my old DJ days on the pirate radio LWR station, that LWR, London Wide Radio, was set up by people who had a real passion for underground black music, and there was not a lot of black music getting played on the radio in the 80s. I mean, now you get stations like One Extra and digital radio which are playing a lot of that music, but in those days it was very hard, and we were trying to fight for freedom of the airwaves, and there was so many battles going on at the time. You know, we had rival stations trying to shut down our transmitters and cut down our aerials. We had the DTI coming through our studios. It's the Department of Trade and Industry. They were coming through with sledgehammers into our studios, smashing the doors down, and trying to take our transmitters and equipment. They were trying to take DJ records. Well, to a DJ, you know, your records are your life. You know, they're so precious, because all those rare grooves that you built up over the years, you spent a lot of money on, you've gone all over the country collecting them, and they were about to be seized by the DTI. But I always remember a good friend of mine, Jasper the Vinyl Junkie. He was a DJ on LWR at the time. He was like the king of P-Funk. He played a lot of Maceo, James Brown, Funkadelic, Parliament. And he was on air when the DTI smashed down the studio door and actually said on the mic to all the listeners, "See you in court." And I just thought that was so funny, because after that, the transmission was just completely shut down, and you know, that was another little episode from those days. So that's really it. I mean, that's my humble little life. You know, I'm either a rebel without a pause, or I'm a rebel without a clue. You decide. Peace out.